Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today we are going to have a look at the latest update of the Horizon Simulation 787-9. Quite a couple of new things in here, and in order to check it out we are going to do a Qantas flight from Melbourne to Auckland. Now we've got some excellent sceneries available for those airports, with Melbourne from OBEX and Auckland from Flightbeam, so this does promise to become quite an interesting flight, even more so because it is an ETOPS flight, so I can tell you a little bit about ETOPS procedures along the way as well. So overall, it does promise to become an exciting one. So let's start as always by doing the walk around, and when the walk around is done we are going to head over to perform the rest of our cockpit procedures. So we start down here on the static ports, which are all looking good. Then we can move forward to the landing gear. And just a small point over here in terms of the landing gear, this is absolutely amazing in terms of the level of detail that we've got in here, seeing that, well, after all, this is based on the default Asobo model of the 787. Even though Horizon did an awesome job enhancing it, this is just something worth pointing out at this point. Alright, so the front landing gear assembly is looking good, the tires are looking good, and we don't have any damages on any of the probes. From the front the plane is looking good as well, and then we can move over to the side. Again, probes looking good, nothing on the cargo doors. Front static ports looking good, the air entry is looking good over here as well, and then we can move over to the engine. We're flying, well, you kind of guessed it already, we are flying the, I almost want to call them standard engines, the GE engines over here, because that is what most people seem to appreciate the most. Even though, well, that one's interesting. If you look at the fan blades overlapping there, that doesn't seem quite right to me. What does that look like if we actually go close up? Well, interesting. Certainly something is wrong here in the engine intake. Not quite sure as to what exactly that is, but well, I suppose some strange overlapping, or I don't know. Alright, so checking the leading edge of the wing, which is looking all fine over here, no damages or anything the likes. Once again, I didn't turn the lights on. Well, you can kind of tell it's a habit already that whenever I'm heading out for a walk around, I just expect my colleague to turn the lights on, because that is how it would work in the real world as well. Okay, landing gear assembly is looking good, no signs of bird strikes or any damages or anything the likes. Tires are okay as well. So yeah, as I mentioned, normally in the real world obviously it's one pilot doing the cockpit setup, the other pilot doing the walk around, so I kind of always forget that I need to turn on those lights myself here in the simulator, so I kind of rely on my colleague doing it, which obviously isn't happening. And then we end up doing a walk around without any of the lights being on and stuff like that, but hey, it's okay, it's a simulator after all. Ultimately, at the moment, there's only a couple planes where we could actually find some damage, which is the A2A Comanche and the Inibuilds A300. The other ones, we basically just do the walk around for the immersion factor of things, but we know that we cannot find any damages up here. Okay, so engine is looking good, no scratches or anything. Let's see the fan blades over here, but this seems to look better. Yeah, kinda. Okay, well, interesting. Okay, doesn't matter though, let's go back up and we are going to start our pre-flight procedures. Oh man, that was a good jump. Alright then, here we are on the captain seat of the 787. So, power. Let's bring on the power. Here we go. Right, things start to line up down here. We will start the APU straight away for air conditioning, and the IRS can come on as well. Okay, so initialize flight please, and we are going to do the same down here in the settings. Let's just go index, settings. So track up is okay, IRS alignment time, yeah, should have gone for realistic, I didn't do that beforehand. And we'll keep the SATCOM where it is. Flight director, we'll go for the cross pointer. And then page number 2, user ID for SimBrief. Let's just enter that real quick. 3393 is mine. Okay, looking good. Great, so weight and balance. Let's go straight for it. We'll get data from the OFP. Stand by. Fuel balancing in progress. Okay, so 23.3 tons of fuel. Let's go ahead and grab ourselves some Navigraph charts here to check what the weather and everything actually looks like. Now, we are flying this using real weather, obviously. So, let's go. What do we have then? Auckland is looking, well, very good. No clouds. Only the day after this recording we are going to get some showers of rain, so no problems. Alternate Christchurch looking good as well. And our ETOPS airports, Canberra and Auckland, very good. Okay, so that's basically it already. So we can take standard fuel, which is 23.4. Tell you what, let's make it 25 just because I'm not too familiar with the airplane yet, so I want a little bit extra just in case. That's really just in case it burns more fuel than it should, because then we might obviously get into trouble when we fly out to the open ocean. Alright, in any case, that's it over here. So let's go ahead and go down and start with our actual FMS pre-flight. So, item page 787-9 GNX engines. Database is current as of this recording. So, the position, well, probably just initialized itself because the IRS alignment time was up already. But that's fine. Let's go ahead and request our route then. Here it is. Yeah, load it up please, thank you. And second uplink that I accidentally requested, we can push that. Okay, so Melbourne, runway 34 departure, and it's the course 9. Right, execute that, and for arrival into Auckland, runway 5 right is in use at the moment, so it's going to be an ILS approach on runway 5 right, and we'll do the Aradi 7 Bravo coming out of Pablu. Alright, execute that. Routing. Well, let's have a very quick look into it. So, plan mode. Increase the range a little bit. Here we go. Okay, straight on the final. That's how I like my routings to be. Alright, perfect. Then we can continue on the init reference. Okay, so final reserve fuel is going to be 2.1 plus 5.4, so we end up with basically 7.5. Okay, zero fuel weight, 167.2. Cruising flight level 390 was uplinked automatically, cost index 15, and step size will make it 2000, like that. Okay, great. Then on the VNAV page, let's have a look at the transition altitude real quick, and that's supposed to be 10,000. Excellent. Alright, so that's basically all we need down here. Quick check through our route, making sure that that stuff is correct. So we're going via Rockdale, Parham, which is an overflight point, and above 5,000 towards Gaydon, above 10,000, and then we continue via our course. Okay, so that's our sit checked already. Easy going, isn't it? Very good. Alright, so APU is running, and on the buses. Alright, so that's the stuff up here done. Flight directors, and we're looking at an initial climb. Let's just say it's 5,000, something the likes. Heading runway track 340, and we'll get to the speed when the time has come. Okay, traffic, terrain, menu, we do want everything like it is automatically. Wow, nice. Actual automation that works. Who would have thought that is even possible? Alright, so QNH 1002 is selected. Going over those messages up here, it seems that everything... Well, emergency lights shouldn't be there. Here they are. Okay, see, that's why we do this stuff. Okay, looking good. Auto brake armed. Man, I can barely read anything down here. 122.8 and 121.5. Like that. Transponder, squawk, 2000 is in. Okay, excellent. So that's our cockpit setup completed already. Then I do suppose we go ahead with the briefing. So threats for the departure. It's an airport that we're fairly unfamiliar with a brand new version of an airplane. So that basically tells us that we are running this, yeah, honestly, carefully, slowly, and if there's anything we're unhappy with, we're simply going to point it out. And I do think that is mostly it. So let's go ahead and do our route check. Yankee Mike Mike Lima, November Zulu Alpha Alpha, Quebec Fox Alpha 153, and the routing is via the uplink route, so we don't need to check that. 1,452 miles, 10 tons remaining, versus a reserve of 7.5, so we are running with like 15-20 minutes extra fuel. Okay, one thing that we could do to get a little bit more accurate data over here is to request the wind uplink. So let's just do that real quick. Okay, wind data uplink is there. Load. And then we also got the forecast uplinks, climb forecast, and descent forecast. Okay, let's see what the fuel says now. 11.1. Better. Okay, so half an hour of extra fuel. Okay, great. Then what else do we have? Yeah, left seat takeoff, runway 34, flaps 5, noise abatement 2, and we are going to, yeah, follow the SID really. There's not much more to say. In case of any engine out, it's rising terrain on the extended center line, so fly straight ahead a few miles. We are going to remain visual and then make a left-hand traffic pattern back if we need to. Alright, we did already check the briefings, we did already consider the taxi. Let's just do it once more for sake of clarity here. Okay, so we're standing up here on Alpha 16, to the right, straight out, and straight to the end, full-length departure runway 34. Alright, any questions about that? No? Very good. Then let's go ahead with the pre-flight checklist. Pre-flight checklist complete. Alright, let's quickly say hello to our passengers, and in the meantime GSX can start to prepare the airplane for pushback. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome aboard this Qantas Flight 153 to Auckland. My name is Emmanuel and I'm your captain today. We expect a flight time of about 3 hours and a smooth ride in 39,000 feet. We would like to say thank you very much for being our guests today. Sit back, relax and enjoy the flight with us. If there is anything we can do for you to make your flight more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to ask any of our cabin crew. The cabin crew is shortly going to point out the safety features on board this Boeing 787 aircraft. I would like to ask for your full attention, as that is not just for your own safety, but also for the safety of the passengers sitting around you. Finally, the cabin crew is here for exactly 3 tasks, and I do request you to observe them. Those are safety, safety, and safety. So please don't disturb them during their safety duty and do follow their instructions. Finally, if they do find a little bit of extra time next to their safety checks, they are going to provide you with a little bit of service and some coffee as well. Thank you very much for your attention. Do hope that you feel comfortable on board, and if there is anything we can do for you to make it more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to ask any of our charming cabin crew. Thank you very much for your attention, and once again, welcome on board. Right, so passengers are dealt with, then we can go ahead with our performance data. So, let's see, what is the latest weather? So, takeoff, page 2. Let's see, the wind is 360 at 14. I do believe if we insert that over here and then just copy-paste it, that's going to be easiest. And the acceleration at 1000. Okay, so let's import the FMS data once again. Yeah, stand by. Right, so thrust rating, we'll select optimum, flaps optimum, anti-ice off. Okay, calculate. So that's D takeoff 251 degrees. Well, tell you what, send output. Takeoff data received. Thank you. Accept. CG 25, 5.75 units trim. Okay. Let's go ahead and trim that out. Right, 5.75 and the V2 159. Here we go. Enough VNAV for the departure. Okay. Good. Then let's go ahead and request our pushback, please. Okay, can't disconnect the ground power unfortunately, so we'll just have to rupture it out. Shite happens. Okay, so before start checklist. Passenger signs. On MCP 159 340 5000. Takeoff speeds 147 151 159. CDU pre-flight. Completed. Taxi and takeoff briefing completed. Before start checklist complete. Ground from cockpit. Go ahead. Confirmed, doors hatches closed, ground can removed, bypass pin is installed. Yes sir, all confirmed. Roger, we are clear to push, facing south. Park and brake set. Okay, release brakes. Brake released.
All engines clear. Start well.
Roger. Okay then, off we go. So that was a quick pre-flight, I do have to say. That was only like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. But hey, that's exactly how it's supposed to be, isn't it? Okay, so I do tend to say we are going to wait a little bit with our engine start, because the engine start in the 787 goes rather quick, and we don't want to have those engines running for too long, you know, for literally no reason at all. So as soon as they have started turning the nose, that's, well, just just while I say it, but that's pretty much the moment where we can commence our engine start. Okay, so good to go. Then I'd say starting engines. All automatic, which is quite nice. So if anything was wrong, the airplane would alert us to it. This is such an improvement, honestly. The Airbus is the same. That is such an improvement compared to the 737 previously, where you had to watch all that stuff yourself. Is it just me, or is that engine start sound like completely new? Don't recall hearing that ever. Okay, we've got two good starts. Let's just flick that APU off already, and for the rest of it we're just going to wait a little moment here.
Please set parking brakes.
Park and brake set, please prepare the airplane for taxi, and we do have two good starts, so see you on the left hand side with a pin, and have a wonderful day, bye bye. Okay. Flight control track. Full up. Yeah, for some reason it doesn't want to go full down, but that is pretty much known on this plane. Full left, full right, neutral. Okay, so we just gotta wait for the ground signal. And then we can... Yeah, thanks. If you were so kind to do that a little bit quicker, please, that would be much appreciated. That was close. You almost bumped into the nose wheel doors. Okay, thanks. Clear disconnect and clear signal on the left side, please, with a pin. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Okay, so that guy's going. And the other has disconnected. I'm good with the radar check now. Okay, so let's go. Full left. Full right. Neutral. Before taxi checklist. Anti-ice. Auto, recall, checked. Flight controls, checked. Ground equipment, clear. APU, off. Before taxi checklist, complete. Okay. So, he is going. Then let's quickly see the clear signal. And then taxi routing is basically as briefed, all the way straight ahead. Okay, come on, my friend. Show me the signal, please. Oh, he's just gone. Okay. Lovely GSX. Well, so be it. Okay, taxi. Look at that. Taxiing in idle already. I mean, not really surprising, seeing we've got those huge engines that can lift the airplane at so much higher weight than what we actually have right now. So, not surprising at all. But nonetheless, always nice to see when developers do get this stuff right. Now, for comparison, when the airplane is at max takeoff weight, it is not really going to do that. And as far as I'm aware, Horizon did actually simulate that. So, that's pretty cool. Okay, so all the way straight, engines can remain in idle. By the way, that very same thing, like the speed at which it starts accelerating here, the power required, that's the same on the A330, but at maximum takeoff weight. So the A330 at 230 tons is still going to do this. Quite nice. I wonder if Aerosoft is going to cover that correctly, because I do have a feeling that they probably won't, at least comparing it with the E-Jet, and seeing that the rumors are that the management of the Flight Sim Studio E-Jet has now taken over the Aerosoft A330. Well, it's surely going to be interesting times ahead. Okay, in the meantime, what we can do is to review the departure briefing. So, threats for this one, I don't really see anything. It's a left seat takeoff, runway 34, flaps 5, noise abatement procedure number 2, and we do have, well, basically nothing special. So it's just straight out, make that right-hand turn, and remember that initial climb limit of 5,000. And then we'll have to see how the airplane is going to handle the overfly waypoint, but at least in terms of what the LNAV preview is showing, it does look rather alright. So I do tend to say that I do expect that stuff to work exactly correctly. Okay, with that in mind, I would say taxi checklist. Or before takeoff checklist, it's called here. Before takeoff checklist complete. So look at that, we didn't need a single bit of thrust above idle. in order to do the entire taxi here. And the airplane got all the way up to 30 knots. I like that. Now it's already started breaking it back down again. A rather violent braking here, but I kind of try to tap the brakes really slowly, but nothing happened at first, so gotta brake a bit stronger now. But that's fine. After all, everybody should be seated in the back there, right? Not that everybody is all the time. Just saying. Okay, line up. Cabin crew, prepare for departure. Okay, the checklist is completed already. Packs are obviously going to stay on. And I'd say that's pretty much it. Let's get that head-up display down. And runway 34 cleared for takeoff. So, are you ready to go? I guessed it. Wonder how. Wonder how. Okay, cool. So, runway 34 it is. So, if you're ready, take off. So, thrust draft, toga toga. A little bit of forward controls. Thrust set. $80 knots. V1, rotate. That tail strike line seems incorrect to me. Positive climb, gear up. I mean, look at that. It's telling me that we're still tail striking it. Which I don't think we are. Okay, let's do a little bit of manual flight. And then later on we'll see how the autopilot is going to do things. But I want to do a little bit of manual right now. Trimming it out still is a little bit of, well, flaps 1. Speed check, flaps 1. Checklist incomplete norm. I doubt it. Flaps up. Probably got stuck again on the checklist page. Something I do notice is that I need to do a lot of trimming here in order to get the airplane stabilized. Now, that is definitely not the case in the real 787. Okay, continue that climb, please. Oh man, you're looking at the MCP for a short moment and immediately you're completely off the flight director. Well, that's exactly the reason why we do these things. That's exactly the reason why we do these things with a multi-crew in the real world. Okay. Autopilot. So, my first impression of the climb out there, well, it was a little, trimming the airplane out was a little bit hard there. I could imagine that in the real 787 that gotta be a lot easier. At least provided the 87 flies similar to the 777. which is where loads of pilots have said in the flight sim community that the airplane should be very easy to trim. About 1 second of trim per 10 knots of speed deviation. Okay, after takeoff checklist real quick. Yeah, we can override that, please. That was complete. And after takeoff checklist complete. Okay, so apart from that, things went rather well. The airplane did what it was supposed to do. And overall, it's still that same awesome Boeing 787 that we came to love. Okay, set standard. Standard cross-check passing 11,000 or flight level 110. Now, checked. Okay, small shortcut then. Let's fly direct to course without going over Geeden. There is nobody in the area here anyway. So direct course, execute. LNAV available. LNAV. Right, passing 10,000. It's beautiful weather over here, so we will not need the seatbelts anymore. Alright, so we've basically made it out of Melbourne. So what I'm going to do now is I will use a little bit of time acceleration in order to get up to cruising altitude, and once we're up at cruising altitude we are then going to deal with a couple of ETOPS related procedures here. As far as I'm aware, for the route that we are flying we don't need any oceanic clearance, so what we'll do is we are going to focus on those ETOPS procedures. Okay, so quick point, determining the cruising altitude. Let's see what we got over here. Optimum 383, maximum 412. Recommended is inoperative, so 390 as planned by SimBrief seems to be the optimal level for the flight. Okay, so 390 is going to come up here. And now, I just said in one of my recent videos that the time acceleration worked really well in the ATR. Well, let's see how it is going to work in the 787 then. I've turned it on 4x acceleration right now. Let's see how the airplane is going to perform and if it is going to be able to maintain altitude when reaching it, and how the turns are going to look. Like, I do estimate the turn of a course to take place long before reaching cruise altitude, so let's see about it. Now, something I am going to do here is I'll get rid of the heads-up display. Because in cruise, you know, you only bump your head into it. It's much nicer just to use the standard flight instruments that we got up there. Okay, so luckily enough, the scenery in Microsoft Flight Simulator seems to work rather well up until 4x time acceleration. When you use more than 4x, then it kind of starts to get a little bit blurry, at least for as long as you're flying the standard speeds of a jet. You know, in the ATR you can use 8x, no problem. But in a standard jet... Okay, so starting the turn. Slightly rolling out and back into it. But apart from that, that is looking quite alright. I mean, those 2 times rolling out of it shouldn't have been there. Would have been a nice, complete, continuous turn in the real world. But apart from that, this did work rather well. Okay, so that's our entire route of flight today. Now, let's start to talk about the ETOPS procedures. Now, what's important for us here? There is one thing that we do a lot in the real world that we just can't do in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that is creating custom waypoints. What we can do is to create PBD waypoints, but we can't give them custom names, and that is what we do a lot in the real world. Now, in the real world, an ETOPS entry point would be called EEP, Echo Echo Papa. And if there is several ETOPS points, you would call it EEP1. And you would save your custom waypoint in the nav database of the airplane like that. So the pilot will program it, and then you just bring it up on the fix page. Because what is very important here, when you are flying, especially North Atlantic, then air traffic control might request your route of flight from the flight management system. Also, your airplane is going to do automatic position reports, and for all of those you must not change the route of flight in the legs page, or Airbus-wise in the flight plan page. So you cannot enter any ETOPS waypoint in there. But what you can do is to program them as custom waypoints and then show them using the fix page. And I'll show you how that works in a moment once we have leveled off at our cruising level of 390. So 1000 to go. And here we go, reaching our altitude. Let's see. Level off. Well, that actually worked pretty fine with time acceleration. I do have to say that was pretty good. Okay, so we're reaching 390, and we are now nicely cruising along, about to fly out to the open ocean, and then we will have to start preparing for our ETOPS sector of the flight. Now, we'll start with a waypoint entry, so let's go ahead and grab our flight plan once again. So, Navigraph charts. Always makes the entire sim lag for a little bit, but here we go now. Okay, yeah, you can dismiss that. We are going to use our standard simulator plan here. Okay, so this is our standard route of flight now. Now, if we go and have a look at the OFP, then we'll start having a look at the maps, because over here we already have what dispatch has prepared for us. You can see it's not a very long part of the ETOPS flight here. It's maybe about a little bit more than half an hour that we'll spend in the actual ETOPS segment. Maybe, you know, maybe 3/4 of an hour, something like that. Okay, so, interesting, by the way, that they draw those ETOPS segments on all those maps here. In the real world, what our dispatch does is you only get them on a single one of those wind maps. And the rest of it, like the significant weather charts, are just going to stay free of all the clutter that is introduced with all those ETOPS symbols. But okay, so let's have a look at the actual OFP now. So the first thing is we are going to check for the actual weather that we've got at the ETOPS airports in question. So today you can see they planned Sydney and Christchurch, I believe, is the second one. So let's go ahead and have a look at the weather for Sydney and Christchurch. How are we going to do that? Well, rather similar to what we would actually do in the real world. So we can see we've got our alternates down here already. When we fly long haul, we would always add all those alternates. So Yankee, Sierra, Sierra, Yankee, add to route. Okay, so now when we go over to the Sydney airport, we can go over here, weather, and we can say this is perfectly fine. Now, contrary to the planning minima that you have on the ground when you plan for an ETOPS airport, where you've got separate special minima, in flight that is not the case anymore. So now all we need to fulfill over here is we need to be able to land in Sydney. So we can see a wind of 320 at 4. So if we go over to the charts, approach 320, so something like runway 34. Let's just take 34 left for the sake of it. What I would do now is, on the printout of the weather that I requested through the ACAS printer, I would write down, like, what's the minima, so 206 feet above the ground. We need an RVR of node number 1. Let's see, we do have a flight director available, so we can use 800 meters RVR. So that is what I would write down now. So 206 feet, 800 RVR, and the general approach available, so an ILS approach, and even an ILS Cat 2 approach down here. So that's our weather at Sydney now checked. So now we can go ahead and we said Christchurch is our second airport. So let's go ahead and do the same over here. Weather, 220 at 5, no cloud detected, 15 degrees. It is worth looking into the forecast as well, if the forecast used to be bad in the past, but in our pre-flight it was good already, so basically all we need to have a look at is the META over here. In the real world, obviously, you got time, since when you fly ETOPS you will fly for at least 2 hours of flight time. So you do have plenty of time available, so no need to rush anything here. Okay, so with our weather now taken a look at, let's go ahead and check for the approaches available in Christchurch. So let's see, airport chart, down here it is. So it's runway 20 or runway 02. The runway is 3.3 kilometers long almost. The weather is from 220, so that's definitely going to mean runway 20 in use for the approach. So let's go down here. ILS approach is available, runway 20. The minimum is 200 feet above the ground, RVR 550. Perfect. So that's what we need to know in order to know now that our ETOPS airports themselves are actually usable for the flight. The next thing then is visualizing our ETOPS segment on the flight plan, and that is what I mentioned earlier on with creating custom waypoints. Now, in the real world, you go to Index, Nav Data, and if you now enter a Nav Data name that the thing doesn't know, for example, let's take EEP1, and here we get the error like not in database. Okay, clear that out, please. In the real world, we could just enter it as a custom waypoint now. So what we'll have to do in the sim is, unfortunately, we'll just have to live with entering them as PBD points or as actual waypoints based by coordinates. I'm going to use the coordinates thing. So we start with the south coordinate 3836.4. So that's what we've got up here in the entry. And then we will go east 15809.0. Okay, and that one isn't listed in the nav log. Fair enough with me. Basically, let's see if we can put it on the fixed page directly. Yes, we can. Perfect. Okay, so here is our ETOPS entry point. That is now marked. Now let's go to the next page, which is going to be the equal time point. Now, SimBrief is a little bit outdated with equal time points. Basically, for our we would not get several anymore, but we would only get one. Now, that one would be the worst case scenario that our operations control during the flight plan would decide on. So we've got several different conditions listed on the side over here, like DX, DC, and you might also have 1X. So those are the three scenarios that are being calculated by flight ops. So we're going to take the one where we need the most fuel. So critical fuel required, that one down here, DC, is the worst one for us. Now, what do those 3 points stand for? Well, DX means decompression, engine out. So you've got a decompression and an engine failure at the same time. Similar to the scenario that the Southwest Airlines 737 had, even though they weren't flying ETOPS, luckily. Now DC is a simple decompression, but with both engines running. As you can see, descending down to level 100, we're going to need even more fuel due to the fuel required in here. We're going to need even more fuel if we've got both engines running after the decompression than if we had a decompression and an engine failure at the same time. Finally, we also have the option of 1X, which is one engine out, and we would get a scenario for that as well. Now, today let's use the one that uses the most fuel. In the real world, as I mentioned, we'd only be presented with a single equal time point anymore for a single airport pair. SimBrief gives us several, so let's use several down here. So that's south 3836.9. And the east coordinate is 16100.4. Alright, and that's created here as well now. So this is our equal time point between Sydney and Auckland. Finally, we need our ETOPS exit point as well, which is based on Christchurch. So that one, again, easy to enter, 3829.1. And the east coordinate, 16534.3. Alright, we're going to enter that on page number 3. And here we go, that's now the entire ETOPS segment created on the flight plan. Again, it is important that you do not just enter those waypoints in here if you are flying on the North Atlantic or the Pacific, or the South Atlantic as well. The reason for that is that air traffic control can request position reports from your aircraft. And basically what's going to happen then, if you enter any waypoint in the flight plan, is that ATC might not get estimating Sasro at time blah blah and Pablo next 0300, Aradi next. No, but it might get Sasro, PBD01, PBD02 and so on. ATC can't make use of that. So basically we are not going to enter anything in the flight plan itself, but we are going to use the fix page in order to mark our airports. Now, there is a widespread, let's call it a widespread procedure in Boeing aircraft. In Airbus, I've never seen that done, and I've never actually seen anybody actually doing it. But just to mention it, what some people like to do as well is you go to the fix page, you enter the airport, and then you draw a mile with your one engine out cruising speed. Let's say, for example, 430 knots. And now you would have a visual representation of where your ETOPS airport is. Now, personally, in the Airbus we can't even draw those rings, so obviously we are not using them. But what we do, or there is no fixed procedures, but what I would like to do, for example, you've got a bearing of 129 now, so if you just go ahead and draw a radial of 130, for example, over here, then you're getting a radial over here, and now let's do the same at 120. So now you kind of draw a little visual representation of where your ETOPS alternate actually is located. And that is my way of doing these things in the Airbus when flying long haul. So I just like to draw these lines towards our ETOPS alternates, and that is going to provide me with the information where my alternate is. While at the same time we've got the points that we marked over here: ETOPS entry point, equal time point, ETOPS exit point, now marked on the ND. Now in the real world, what we would do is we would give those waypoints certain names. So you can see over here it just created them as fixed points, but without any actual name to it. As I mentioned earlier, if you go to index nav data and you just enter a name over here that doesn't exist in the database, then that is automatically going to create a new waypoint. And then by entering the latitude and longitude, you could give them appropriate names. And a naming convention that is used in my airline and in my airline group is that you would call the entry point EEP1, so ETOPS entry point 1. Then for the equal time point, you got a limit of the number of characters that you can use. So you cannot use 8 characters, 6 is maximum. So for that reason, we would use the IATA codes of the airport. So for Sydney, instead of YSSY, we would use Y or SYD. And then you would use the IATA code of the other airport. So for that equal time point, for example, we would use the naming convention Sierra Yankee Delta Charlie Hotel Charlie, so Sydney Christchurch, and that is how we would name this waypoint. And then you got the ETOPS exit point, which would be called EXP2, Echo X-Ray Papa 2, or sorry, Echo X-Ray Papa 1 actually, since it belongs to the first ETOPS segment. And if you have several ETOPS segments for a flight, then you would obviously name the next one EEP2 and EXP2 and so on. And that is basically how we would be marking our ETOPS points over here. Alright, so, that's pretty much all there is to say about this. That step climb over here, I don't like it. Let's use step size 0, so that it doesn't calculate any further step climbs. Optimum 390, we're going to maintain this all the way over. So, when entering an ETOPS area, we're over MICAC right now. 17.3 on the fuel, 1 hour 1 in flight, so 0110/17.3. Obviously, when you're flying ETOPS, checking that you don't have a fuel leak and that your fuel usage is good is very important. So over MICAC, well, don't have it in the navlog down here. In the real world, they'd give us all waypoints so that we could do these checks at all times. For us, Sasro, hour 40 and 12 tons of fuel is the forecast. So if we go over here, Sasro, 15 tons of fuel, so we got plenty there, and well, for the time we'll see about it. But like that, we can see that we are basically running well. And doing these checks when flying ETOPS, very important since, well, it's engines turning or passengers swimming, as we know. Okay, so now I continue to draw my lines, marking me where my ETOPS alternate airport is located, and that is basically the entire thing we are going to do for running our ETOPS flight. So now it just literally comes down to sitting there waiting, chatting with the cabin crew, and spending your time trying to get that flight over somehow. But lots of stuff we can do on our long-haul flights and routes. So obviously we keep monitoring our progress of the flight. We keep monitoring the weather at our ETOPS alternate airports. Now today, as I mentioned, today we don't have any problem with ETOPS alternates. But what we would do on the long-haul flights is obviously you add all the en route alternates down here to the map, then you can easier follow along. Like I've added Sydney over there, Christchurch down here. Like that, it's easier to follow along where you are, where your alternates are, and stuff like that. What else can we do? Obviously at every waypoint we're going to do a position check, and when we are flying on the North Atlantic, then what we would do as well is to check that all the tracks and the distances between the waypoints are correct. So obviously today that's a little bit less a problem, but nonetheless, just to give you an example of how that might look like, for the next leg from Sassaro to Aradi, if we have a look at our route over here, let's bring that up. So airway segment fixes, here we go. So from Sassaro, it's going to be a magnetic course of 070, and we have a distance as well, 373. So if we now check our legs page, we can see 069, 371. Now, why is there a difference? Well, there's two reasons for it. The first one is that this is always the track departing the waypoint. However, we might, due to the curvature of the Earth, that track is going to change eventually. So there is a slight difference there. Now, if you go into the Jeppesen Airway manual, you can find some tables that are going to tell you how much the difference has to be, and like that you can cross-check it. But honestly, since we don't even have true north capabilities in this airplane, and since those headings over here should be true if I'm not mistaken, well, they do give us a variation, so this is probably magnetic in Jeppesen, okay. In Lido it's true for sure. But okay, so like that, overflying every single waypoint, you would check the track and distance to your next waypoint are correct, and so on. So, you know, you're doing this like once every 45 minutes or so when flying oceanic, which is where most of the ETOPS flights happen, except for a couple flights over Africa. So that is pretty much how we do these things. Now, we are about to reach the equal time point over here. If we have a look at the fixed page number 2, here we go, exactly over the ETP, 15.8 tons of fuel on board. So let's now go ahead and have a look at the OFP down here again. So now you can see critical fuel required is about 10.6, and the estimated fuel on board is actually 13.6. Now we did load a little bit more fuel on the ground, so we can cross-check if the fuel on board value makes sense, and if for whatever reason we would have deviations on the fuel, then we would obviously go ahead and estimate the reason for them. At the same time, we've overflown the equal time point, 575 miles to Sydney. So now we can choose Christchurch as our ETOPS exit point, or just Auckland straight away as our next airport. I'm going to go with Auckland, so that's bearing 245, so let's take 250 like that, and then maybe 240 like that, and that tells me immediately where my target airport is. And that's about as easy as flying ETOPS is. Now, it is worth mentioning that different pilots are using different ways to visualize where your alternate airport is. Personally, I'm a big fan of doing these converging lines over here because it gives me a very good idea straight away, but there is other possibilities as well. For example, pilots might go ahead and create those lines based on the equal time point. So they might just go over to the ETP that we've got over here and then say, what do we want? Let's say 070, or let's say that's 060, I guess, something along those lines. Like that, you could just draw a line from the equal time point over to the next ETOPS alternate as well. And like that, you could, for example, draw a line from the ETP to the first waypoint, then to the second waypoint, or airport, I should say, not waypoint. So the only important thing here that really counts is that you have an idea of where your alternate is in case you need it. So my favorite, as I mentioned, is to take the waypoints like this. So let's take NZAA 070 and oh sorry, that should have been 240 and 250. The 240, 250. Like that, I know exactly where my alternate airport is. Can even make that 245 and 255 now. That should probably look a little bit better. Well, 235, 245. That's what I'm looking for. Now I got it. Okay, so like that, I know exactly where my alternate airport is. I know how to get there, and that's what counts. Okay, so we've overflown Sasro. And at Sasro, well, the Boeing doesn't tell me how much fuel we had there. Where is the, where's the position? Oh, grayed out. Okay. Because on the POS report page you would get that info. Anyway, Sasro, 14.7. Estimated fuel over there was 12.0, so you can see we are carrying sufficient extra fuel. Okay, and that is basically how we do those, that is basically how we do the navigation on the ETOPS flights. What we do, marking stuff on our displays and so on. Now, another point that becomes quite interesting when flying ETOPS, because it's not technically an ETOPS thing, but it still is related, is what you do when you've got some weather returns up there. So let's go ahead. Can we turn it up? Yeah, here we go. Here's some weather and here's some weather. Now, this one is interesting now for flying on remote areas, like, for example, the North Atlantic, the Pacific, etc. Basically, it is for areas where air traffic control doesn't know what you are doing because they don't have radar. Obviously, they do have things like ADS-C, so they can request your positions, they can view it like that. Your airline can as well at any point. But the important thing here is, what are we going to do if we need to deviate from weather in remote areas? Now, in Europe, for example, or in the US, we would just go for a radar heading and we would circumnavigate the weather using a radar heading. In areas like these, we cannot really do that, so what we are going to do instead is we are going to fly offsets. Now, an offset is done over the route page, at least on the real plane. I am afraid the this one doesn't seem to support it. So on the real Boeing, you just go on the route page, and in there you could enter your offset, and that would basically mark you by how far you can deviate from your route. So you would talk to ATC, for example, and tell them request 20 miles right offset due to weather. Then ATC would approve that. You would insert your offset line 20 miles right, and then there is a little bit of discussion between pilots as to what the correct procedure is. Some say always use LNAV and follow that offset route. Others say, well, you're cleared up to 20 miles right offset. So what you do in between is completely up to you. So they use heading select in order to navigate through the CBs. Well, one downside of using heading select, even though it means that you need to deviate a little bit less from your weather, the downside of it is that ADS-C tracking is lost. So air traffic control and your airline can no longer easily track your position, which for the airline might be a good thing depending on if you want to do some sightseeing over the Chinese wall and stuff like that. Hint, don't do it. But for ATC it is somewhat a good thing to be able to see exactly where you are at any given time. Now, we've just overflown the ETOPS exit point, so we are already outside of the ETOPS segment and getting close to land again. Now, do note that we are still an hour away from the nearest land, so it's not like we could just land at the next airport now. If anything happened, like for example, if a passenger would get ill, or if you've had a technical malfunction, stuff like that, you are still pretty far from the furthest airport. So just because you are no longer flying in the ETOPS segment, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you are all good and well and don't need to worry about where you might be landing anymore. You quite certainly still need to. However, you know, being out of ETOPS already means that, well, it's just about an hour, legally. However, you always need to keep in mind what kind of facilities are available at the places that you've got available to land. So, when flying across the North Atlantic, for example, to return to my favorite routes, when you're flying across the North Atlantic, it is quite important to note that even though Greenland has Kangaloo Swag available with 2,000 and a bit meters of runway, you can get like any widebody down there, but can you get it back out again? Something to think about. Obviously, when you're on fire or when there's a passenger dying, then, well, you would still land there. But, you know, if you've got something that is not as urgent, then you might want to continue to Canada. And talking about Canada, we've got ETOPS alternates usually in Gander, St. John's, Goose Bay, Stephenville. Those are the, let's call it regular candidates that you would consider on the Canadian side. Usually if St. John's and Gander are bad, then Goose Bay is going to be good, or the other way around. But you always need to think about what is actually available in those places. Let's say you've got a passenger who's having a heart attack, and you've got an ETOPS alternate where you can land, but is there going to be a hospital available where they can provide proper treatment for the passenger? Or is there just going to be an ambulance with basic treatment possibilities only? Now, as a pilot, you can really not know all of that ahead of time, but what you can know is where to get help. And most long-haul airlines, I hope all, but I'm afraid not, for sure the airline group that I'm flying in has some sort of a medical advisory team available through satellite phone. So we've got that phone number, we can call them at any time through satellite communication, and we can tell them like, okay, that's our situation, this is what we got. Passengers having a heart attack, it's a male passenger, 60 years old. We can get them values like the blood oxygen, like the pulse, and stuff like that. The cabin crew is going to get all those values for you. And when you've got all that kind of data available, then you would go ahead and call your medical service, and they would give you guidance like, okay, so if it's really urgent that the passenger sees any kind of a doctor, then, well, land at the nearest suitable airport. Okay. But let's say the passenger is having, for example, a stroke, and there is a doctor available on board the airplane, and the doctor was able to give first treatment, and you've got two possible airports. Now, that medical team on the phone might be able to tell you, okay, that airport may be 5 minutes closer, but if you just fly for another 5 minutes, then you can deliver that patient or that passenger to a hospital that's specialized in whatever kind of problem he currently has. And if that possibility exists, then by all means do carry that passenger forward to that other airport, which might be further away than the area that, or than the nearest suitable ETOPS airport. But you know, if the passenger can get better treatment there, then you will have the chance to get medical experts on the satellite phone to tell you what the right decision is to make then. So that's something to keep in mind. For example, when having a problem further than 30 west on the Atlantic on a westbound flight, so you're at 40 west, you have a passenger who's got a medical problem that requires you to land at an airport. Now, obviously, you might have Goose Bay or Gander or St. John's as closest airports where you could land. However, if you fly a little bit further, you know, those three airfields are basically former military fields. They do have some military hospitals available and stuff like that, so you can basically land there and deliver the passenger to a doctor. But it might be a better idea to continue flying on to Halifax, which is, you know, like half an hour flight time longer, but Halifax is a full-blown large city having all different kinds of hospitals available, and they might have a hospital that's specialized in the kind of treatment that your passenger needs. By all means, it is going to be better, unless it's immediately life-threatening, but by all means, it is going to be better to continue to Halifax that half an hour, rather than delivering the passenger to, let's say, St. John's, have him get first treatment there, then somehow transport him to a hospital that's specialized. So, you know, before that passenger ends up sitting in the ambulance for two days at a time, being transported over to Halifax, if you can just fly him there with 30 minutes flight time longer, obviously provided the passenger isn't going to die before you reach that field, then by all means it is something to consider doing, and that's what you've got those medical facilities for. But that as well is a very important point why on a long-haul flight we would want to keep an eye out on what we can do with our passengers. So, something to keep in mind as we fly along. Alright then, we've already left all the ETOPS areas, we can clean our FMS up again, so let's delete all those points that we entered previously, let's get rid of all of those. Like so. Overflying Pablo, 11.5 tons of fuel, 2 hours and 24, so you would do another fuel check here, and we are almost reaching our top of descent already, so let's go ahead and do our FMS pre-flight for our landing. So this was just a short summary of the kind of stuff you would do on a long-haul flight, and of the kind of stuff that you need to pay attention to when flying ETOPS. So ETOPS doesn't just mean flying further than an hour flight time away from the next airport. There is a lot more coming into consideration when doing that. Now, I'm not even going to start with what it's going to look like when shit really hits the fan and all the airports have got bad weather and stuff like that. That's going to be a topic for a different video, but for now, suffice to say that things can get a little bit more complicated than what we knew right now, and what we talked about right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start planning our arrival then, and planning our descent. So what we can do is just request the latest weather forecast once again. Even got one available here, even better. So let's just request the latest one nonetheless though. Okay, going to start with the star. What do we have here? Arriving over Pablo, so we've just entered the star already. Load that weather, thank you. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so, VNAV descent page. Yeah, let's make it a little bit higher speed here. Give me 845, that's quite quick, isn't it? Anyway, 0.845 slash, let's make it 300 knots on the descent. giving us a little nicer profile there. Okay, so we've got Aradi, Jabba with 280 knots above 10,000, Alpha Alpha 514 above 7,000, then we got Zocca, max 240 knots by ATC, and above 5,000, Alpha Alpha 506 above 4,000, and then we continue towards Lengdu, maximum 210 knots above 3,000. From Lengdu we join the ILS approach onto runway 5 right. So we got the Fox Lima 05, which is 5 miles out, not in our database here. We only got Ugros in 2000, so there's quite a couple of waypoints missing in our database up here, which might play a role. So we'll level off in 3000 at Lengdu, and then like 2 miles after that we're going to start our descent, and that'll have to do. It's probably the best we're going to get. Missed approach, fairly easy, track 051 to MREC, mandatory 3000, that's what we have. Maximum speed on the missed approach 185 knots, so we'll have to keep the flaps out. That's a little bit annoying, not sure why somebody would do that, but, well, so be it. Okay, then our route is checked with that. Don't need anything in the fix info really, that's perfectly fine without it. So, do we have landing performance? No we don't, okay. So I'm just going to pick a random number here for the auto brake. Let's see, landing at runway 5, international terminal is here, so we got to vacate rather early. Let's say auto brake 3 is going to be a good number here, without throwing the passengers into the front galley, but likewise not wasting much time. Okay, on the nav routes I want Alpha Alpha. 14.8 is correct, and we can put that active on both sides, please. No NDBs or anything the likes here. Minimum, let's see, ILS DME, full approach light system available, 215 feet. Now comes the point of dialing in the minimum again. Here we go, 215, looking good. Alright then, quick check of the latest weather. It's 160 at 4, so straight crosswind, 19 degrees, 1015. Here you go, 1015 is in. Okay, last thing then is the flap settings. So 10.3 on landing means we burn 700 kilos. So landing weight is going to be 180.7. Tend to use flaps 30 for that landing, otherwise we end up being really quick here. Alright. And that's pretty much all we need. Okay, descent checklist. Recall, checked, auto brakes, 3, landing data, Vero 30147, minimum barrel 215, and approach briefing completed, descent checklist complete. Alright, and that is about everything that we can do over here. So let's turn the time acceleration back on, back to 4x speed. Okay, cool. So, that's pretty much everything that we could say about ETOPS, about the approach preparation. So I do hope that you learned something on this. If you did, then be sure to put it in the comments below, and if you watched it all the way, or if you just skipped forward to this point here. It's certainly going to be interesting to listen to what you guys think about this, and all I can say is that it did take a couple flights to really get used to doing those ETOPS segments, especially if you're doing a longer ETOPS flight, one that, you know, takes you across multiple ETOPS segments, like 3 or 4 ETOPS segments combined with you name it. It does take a little getting used to it, but once you're used to it, I honestly think it's fair to say that my favorite style of flying currently is long haul. It's so much more relaxed than doing all that short haul stuff and getting messed over by air traffic control and by ground handling and everything, you know, all the time. So, my opinion, long haul certainly is my favorite way to go at the moment. And yeah, there is quite a bit of stuff to do, as you have just seen. Obviously, things get even more interesting when you're not flying in, let's call it, first world countries, but when you're flying over Africa. You know, over Africa, first of all, the communication with ATC is going to be very hard. Then, if you get into an area of bad weather, then it's going to be really widespread. So, especially when you fly through the Intertropical Convergence Zone, the ITCZ, then over there things are going to become even more interesting. So all that lovely stuff really coming together makes a long-haul flight quite a bit more work than many flight simmers would expect. So if you're a flight simmer doing long-haul by just taking off late in the evening, going to bed, waking up 9 hours later and then landing, believe me, you can't do that in the real world. You always have something to do. It's not getting boring, that's what I can say for sure. Okay then, descend to 5000, set QNH. QNH 1016 cross-check, passing 18.6 now. Or the other way around, passing, let's say 1600 now. Okay, you can already see how long I'm leaving my time acceleration on over here. Goes to tell you what I think about, well, sitting here watching the autopilot do its thing. But once we get down to 10,000, I'm going to go back to real time, promise. Okay, I'm going to ignore that 240 speed restriction there. That was by ATC only, so even though it's in the database, I'm going to ignore it. What I'm not going to ignore, though, is the 10,000 foot restriction, so let's go level change. And 250. Alright, so seatbelts are on already, lights are coming on. Let's also get the heads-up display down again. Thank you. And that is it. Okay, cool. So, we're on local QNH already. Approach checklist. Altimeters 1015. QNH 1015. Approach checklist complete. That's as easy as it is, gentlemen. Making our lives easy and enjoyable. Alright, cool. So, pretty much everything is done. We're on 10.4 on the fuel already. That was the forecast landing fuel, if I'm not mistaken. Well, 100 kilos more. Doesn't matter. That's fine like it is. Even though it's 146 now. Cool. So we're about back on the profile. VNAV. What I do find interesting is that it's going into VNAV path mode. Like, if you have a look at the speed indication, then you've got that band around the speed target, which is the speed band that is acceptable for the airplane to fly. And I would kind of expect that if we're above the 245, it should go into VNAV speed and chase the speed rather than the path, shouldn't it? I mean, that's the entire idea of why we've got that indication here on our speed indicator. Likewise down here, of course. But well, we're getting where we want to go. That's all that matters, is it? So, beautiful country that we're approaching up here. That looks really nice. That's a beautiful coastline. And that must be looking absolutely amazing when you were doing this in the real world. That must really be an amazing sight. I mean, the entire country line here must be really, really interesting to see in the real world when flying over it. Okay, 1,000 to go. Let's go down to 3. 3,000 checked. Okay, slightly above the glide slope at the moment. I wonder if the airplane is going to do anything about that. Probably not. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go level change and start reducing our speed. Flaps 1. Speed checks. Start at 210. Or just go down to the flap 1 speed here. We might have to help the plane a little bit with some speed brakes. Okay, lock armed. Let's fly it back into the glide slope there before arming approach mode. I love it when speed brakes work. On the 787 as well. It's probably just the 7.3 that's really bad with the speed brake, but the 7.8 is really great there. 2,000 feet a minute, and that's just half speed brake. Okay, flaps 5. Localizer. Okay, approach armed. Room rating 051. Beautiful countryside. I like it. 1,000 to go. Let's see if we can make it, or if we'll need to set the MCP altitude down a bit. Ready, you set it down should altitude capture occur. Here we go, glide slow. Go around altitude 3000 set. So, spoilers are in. Okay, flaps 10. Just get a little bit more drag here. Checked. Okay, speed brakes are armed. So that 2500 call was a little bit early, of course, because the airport's located down on sea level, while we are flying over a couple of hills over here. Always question what your airplane is telling you. Like, it might be correct, but it might likewise be wrong. So, always question what your airplane is telling you. Or at least find the logical explanation for it. That's part of situational awareness as well. Okay, now the 2300 is probably correct though, so gear down. Flaps 20. And flaps 30. Landing checklist. Landing checklist complete. Alright, so that's pretty much everything we needed to do. So 5 miles out, we're stable. Looks like this airplane slows down a lot better than the Airbuses do. Which kind of surprises me, seeing that the initial rate of descent in clean configuration is around about the same. But, well. Okay, so let's do manual thrust here. Auto throttle off. And autopilot off. Passing stabilized through the gate. Awesome. So now we can practice using the heads-up display a little bit. And we can practice using the thrust a little bit. Because I see a lot of flight simmers constantly changing aggressively the thrust on final approach. And I really don't know why they do that, because basically you don't need to do anything there. Like, look at where my thrust is. I'm keeping it pretty much constant. What I can say is I'm very slightly gaining airspeed here. So I'm just pulling off like 1% of N1 or so. Now I'm keeping the thrust again exactly where it is. As you can see, speed is varying a little bit with the wind, but the general speed is staying exactly where we want it to be. Alright then, our first touchdown in New Zealand on this channel as far as I'm aware. Continue, at least on complete line flight. Those Christchurch things, they don't count. Oh, that nose wheel came down a little quick. Okay, spotters, reverse. Again, slowing down much quicker than we should. Let's go idle reverse. Let's see if the deceleration rate matches now. Because that was something that I do seem to remember they wanted to improve on. But okay, look at that. Without the reverse, the auto brake 3 deceleration rate pretty much matches. Let's go auto brakes 2, see what happens. Okay, manual brakes, time to vacate that runway. So yeah, the reverse is still a little bit strong in this aircraft. Hopefully that's something they can work on for a future update. But apart from that, the latest Horizon 787 worked really well for this one. Where's my thrust going? No. I just said it was working well, and at that time it starts to decide to set toga thrust on its own. No comment on that. That's Murphy's Law. That had to happen. Something like that. Okay, great. So the runway is vacated. Let's go ahead and... I'm pretty sure normally they taxi over here, but I just want to go straight for a little to taxi past the terminal. I just want to see what that looks like from a little bit closer. So something worth mentioning is that flight beams San Francisco is going to come very soon, hopefully. And looking at the quality of Auckland over here, I'm really looking forward to San Francisco. It's one of those airports that really are desperately needed for the sim, and Flight Sim are one of my absolutely favorite developers. They're doing awesome jobs with pretty much everything they touch. So, really looking forward to San Francisco. Okay, so let's tidy up. And start up the APU as well. Alright, great. Checklist incomplete norm. No. Yeah, landing checklist. You were complete, my friend. Here we go. That's better. Alright, so we made it over. Now we just gotta make our way to the gate, and then we can say that we have completed our flight. Now, in the real world, I do know where Qantas is parking over in Auckland on this particular flight, but that's probably not going to be applicable to our 787, because as I mentioned, the real world flight is operated with 737-800. But tell you what, let's see if we can find some additional information there, because obviously Qantas does operate 787s in Auckland, even though they just continue to fly on to New York. But hey, that should give us some sort of data as to what we can expect. So I'm checking flight radar as I'm taxiing, so if I'm now getting off the runway, then well, probably well deserved. But hey, we gotta get that done, do we? Okay, so, let's see, the last real-world flight stood at the main terminal. Okay. Well, so parking just over there. I suppose we can do that. And let's see, stand number on flight radar was stand number 7. Okay, if they do put a 787 there, I did not quite expect them to, but if they do that, then so are we. So, GSX, gate 7. Request follow me? No thanks. Okay, APU is started and running already, even better. TCAS off, yeah, cancelling. So let's see how's the wingspan looking out around these gates. Yeah, that's actually better than I thought. It's easy to overestimate how long it is, huh? That's what she said. Okay, gate 7, here it is. Lights off. And weather radar is off as well. That's always my standard check when taxiing into a gate. Lights and radar, because that's what can potentially harm the ground crew. The lights only at night, but better safe than sorry. Okay, here we are. So, the guidance system looks pretty static to me, and we do have a marshal eye anyway. Right, here we are. Parking brake set, APU running, shutdown. Cabin crew, all doors in park. And with the externals connected, let's put the APU off again. Alright, below 20%, beacon off, shutdown checklist. Park and brake, set. Shutdown checklist complete. Alright everyone, I do hope that you have enjoyed this flight. If you did, then do let me know in the comments below, and let me know if you enjoyed the explanations on the ETOPS flight as well, and if I should do more on oceanic and long-haul flying. Now with that, I would like to say thank you very much now though, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, if you did like the video, be sure to leave a like in YouTube as well, as it does really help out the channel. And if you are up for more, don't forget to subscribe. Finally, if you really like what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. But until then, I would like to say thank you very much, and see you all again on the next one.